I ventured out this year. I left my job as the chief product officer at Dribbble to start a brand new company. And that company is gigantic. My goal is to help you master the new influential disciplines that are driving results within organizations, like product leadership taught by Ben Foster, the former CPO at Whoop. It's not just video courses. We're combining video lectures with take-home assignments and exercises, and then small group mentorship to really help level you up, and all at a cost that most companies' learning and development budget covers. So if you're interested, go to gigantic.is, that's gigantic.is, sign up for a course, and I'll walk you through everything that you need to know. And if you enroll and let me know that you heard about this on Rocketship, I've got a special discount for you.
Welcome to the Rocketship podcast. I'm Matt Goldman.
I'm Joelle Steiniger.
And I'm Michael Saka. Today we talk to Adda Birni, the founder of Skillcrush, which is a really interesting marketplace focused on women learning tech. So, guys, what did you take away from this episode as kind of the biggest learning that we got from Adda?
Well, what was really interesting for me to hear was a lot about the early struggles she had getting this going, and the way she really persevered through what she called the Trough of sorrow. It was a really funny story, the way she told it, and I really enjoyed hearing about that.
Yeah, she has a really electric personality. It was a great talk. Really interesting to hear about how she's targeting women with this. She's taking a different approach to teaching people how to code and how to make websites, and they've niched down, so to speak, on women, and it's really interesting how they're promoting it.
Yeah, and I liked her focus outside of Silicon Valley, too. So she wasn't looking for women in Silicon Valley that are interested in tech. She was looking for women anywhere that are interested in tech. And I think if more tech businesses started to tackle problems that weren't so tech-focused, there are some huge businesses just sitting dormant there for people to start. So I thought she had an amazing perspective on there. And let's get into it.
We'd like to take a moment to thank our awesome sponsors. CodeShip makes continuous delivery simple and easy. Go to codeship.com/rocketship to get 20% off 3 months.
Customer.io is a modern email platform built for startups. Go to customer.io/rocketship to start sending emails that convert.
We'd also like to thank InVision app. InVision is by far the best prototyping and collaboration tool on the market. I can personally say I can't imagine delivering another design comp without it. It made collaborating with our entire team incredibly easy, and the annotation tool alone saved us hours of back and forth. Go to invisionapp.com/rocketship and sign up to get their starter plan free for 90 days.
Skillcrush is an online education company. We teach technical skills, so mostly web development and design. Actually, pretty much only web development and design. And we do it through an online class model. There's a lot of mentorship. And what's kind of unique about us is that we're both very beginner friendly, and our audience is primarily women.
Interesting. So you guys are largely bootstrapped, right?
Yes.
What was the Trough of sorrow like for you?
Long and hard.
Give us what kind of
how
take
long
us
and
back.
How hard?
We'll take us back to one of those kind of the experience. What was it like for you?
Yeah. So I mean, so if I just go back to the very beginning, like we probably started doing what I would say, like, running quote unquote experiments, as I am and really was at that time, like a huge lean startup junkie. And so we had run a design and development company, and by we, I mean the people who ended up founding Skillcrush with me. And then we had tried to do our first kind of software product, kind of startup-y thing. And it was a tablet publishing software, similar to, if you guys know, OnSwipe.
Yeah.
And this came out of, I don't know, we thought we had good reasons to make it, but it was like, in every way it was a bad fit. Like, I think the product was bad. We weren't the people to execute on it. It just was bad. So that had been kind of this, startup failure, quote unquote. It didn't even get off the ground though. So like, I feel like I don't even usually talk about it as a startup failure, but what I really took away from that was like, wow, like you really should not spend any time doing anything until you've like validated something, you know, like, and by validated, like gotten someone outside of like you and your co-founder to like agree that this is a good idea. So I really took that to heart when we started Skillcrush. And so we really like, I was like, okay, like we're going to do this, like we're going to do this right this time, and we're going to de-risk, and we're going to think about like what are our riskiest assumptions and test them. And so we started that process in April of 2012, and that began with starting a newsletter list. And the sort of what I had identified as our riskiest assumption was that the idea of Skillcrush was premised on the belief that women en masse would be interested in online coding information. And so we started this newsletter and tried to get some people to sign up, and they did, which was good. So that kind of, you know, that was like, okay, pass go, like keep going. And so then we ended up doing an incubator, and then we launched our first product in October of 2012. And at the time, our thought was that we were basically going to be like a Treehouse competitor, but like sort of like your more feminine, I guess, version of Treehouse. And so what we launched were these tutorials, and it was like it was the first part of an HTML tutorial, and then it was going to be like the second part of an HTML tutorial, and then there would be 2 CSS tutorials and 1 tutorial about how to get your website up. And it was going to be a package of 5 tutorials that we would eventually sell. But we just launched the first one for free to sort of gauge interest and see things. And what basically happened was that, you know, and at this point, like we had taken the funding in August, and it's like October. And at that point, like, I don't know, between startup costs and like, we were like, we should all get salaries because that's appropriate for like, you know, revenue negative businesses. I don't know. I mean, it is. You do have to do what you have to do. But anyway, the point being that most of the money was gone at that point, and we launched this thing. And so I start trying to do some customer development after this first tutorial to see like, okay, like you know, 5,000 people have signed up for this first tutorial. Will any of them pay for like the next 4? And basically like nobody would pay for it. Like I think at one point I got like one dude in Michigan who was like, yeah, like I bought Treehouse and like I would pay you for these tutorials. And I was like, that's awesome, but like you're not my target demographic at all. So like this is a problem. So I was like, all right, great. Like have you guys ever seen the SNL skit that's like Red Flag? It's a perfume commercial. And it's got Kristen Wiig. I'll have to send it to you guys. It's really funny.
I haven't seen that.
It's like this whole joke is like, you know, she used to be a dancer in Vegas, like Red Flag. So that's how I felt. Like I was like doing these interviews, and I was like only like guy in Michigan wants to like pay for your product, like Red Flag.
So why did you keep going if it was saying, you know, this is not right?
Well, I guess I would argue that, I mean, I guess I did keep going, but we made some really substantial changes. Okay. So yeah, this question of why do you keep going when it's not working is a really interesting one that I don't really have an answer to, except for I mean, like,
that's why we all are here, yeah, exactly.
Right? Like,
but if you can't prove that women want to code, or you can't sell them a product to learn how to code, how did you attack it from a different angle?
I mean, so basically at that moment, I was like, I don't know what the answer is. Like, I just need to talk to people until I get somewhere. Cause like, what else can you do? Right.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I guess it's crazy to me now that I like know a lot of people and to watch how other people deal with stuff in ways that I think are really, really poor ways to deal with this kind of situation. But looking back on it, I think I actually handled it really well. And I basically just set up customer development interviews where I would just go to coffee with people and I just talked to them. And I had read Running Lean at that point, and I think he nails it when he says, you know, like you just got to talk to people until you know what they're going to say. And what I found, basically, like the thing that came out of it was that I would ask people what their biggest problem was with, like, sort of in this arena of like wanting to learn and like not knowing what to learn and all those things. And they all said the same thing, which is that they said that they didn't know what to learn And that they were just overwhelmed by the amount of choices and like where to go find the information. And even like, you know, with like something like a Lynda or Treehouse, like it was like, yeah, that's cool that that's there. But like I go to lynda.com and it's 10,000 videos. Like which one do I start with? And then I would ask them, well, how did you try to solve this problem for yourself? And basically what I found was that the group split into two camps, and it was the camp that Googled it and did not find the answer, and the camp that asked a friend and did find the answer. And that was sort of the key insight for us, was that this ability to like talk to someone and like have someone, this feeling that somebody was there to guide you through the process was critical in people's success. And honestly, like when I then reflected back on my own experience, that was absolutely the answer to my success, is that I had friends who were like, oh, read this book, or like learn WordPress, or, you know, whatever. And so that just inspired me to, I was like, okay, well, what if instead of tutorial, we call it a class and we have an instructor? And I was like, I'll just be the instructor, you know, and answer people's, like, I was like, I'm just going to answer people's customer support emails, really, is what I'm going to do. But I will tell, you know, we'll talk about it like that. And it was like immediately game changing. Like, it was like all of a sudden people who were telling me $35 was too expensive were like $125, like, oh yeah, that seems cheap.
Wow.
And it was just really shocking. And I was like, okay, well, let's try that. And so then I took the tutorial that we were giving away for free and basically repackaged it as a class. And like, I mean, we only opened it up to 25 slots, but we like sent it, it was literally just a repackaging. We were like, okay, this isn't a tutorial now, it's a class. And like, you're going to have an instructor and her name's going to be Adda. And like, she'll be available on email anytime, day or night. And we sent it out to our newsletter list and like it sold out in like half an hour or something crazy like that. So, and you know, none of this, it was 25 people. I'm not supposed to diminish my accomplishments. It was 25 people who were really excited. Yeah, but anyway, so that was like the first sort of positive signal. But that, of course, we weren't even into the Trough of Sarah at this point. This was still like when I was like, you know, like, oh, it's like a cute little startup bump in the road. Mm-hmm. So then what happened is that we were doing these classes and it was going really well. And, you know, people really liked it. And I really appreciated you guys' interview with Gabriel Weinberg. And then I read his book. And what I liked most about his book was him talking about how startups take a long time and how people give up too soon, and how you need to be able to sort of understand the positive signals when like there is not a lot of them, but also be able to understand the difference between like deluding yourself and like there actually being some there. And I think with us was that people really loved it. Like we would develop these really deep relationships with our students, and like, you know, like students have come to visit us and like given us gifts, and like I've made great friends and hired a bunch of my students at this point and stuff like that. So that part of it was always really good. The hard part for us was, and continues to be to a certain extent, of course, it's like, you know, the scale of the problem is different now, but is sort of getting a big audience or like traction. So what ended up happening is like, it was like, okay, we did like 5,000 the first month, and we were like, yeah, 5,000, like next month we'll do 10,000, and you know, and then 20, and then whatever, it'll be amazing. And in fact, it was like 5,000, and then it was like 4,000, and it was like 3,000, it was like 1,000. Like, oh my God. And at this point we'd like spent all the $75,000. And I mean, so in 2013, I made $5,000 from Skillcrush, and that was the end of the money that we had taken on as investment. And then the rest of the year I had to like fend for myself. So
what did you do in that
time? I did a lot of client work on the side. And I mean, so just to like, you know, I had talked to Joelle about this. I mean, I lost 2 co-founders during this process. Like it was a really long trough of sorrow. That was really bleak. And
did they just kind of give up, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think to put it really like negatively, I would say they gave up. To put it like more sort of, I think like kindly, I think that it wasn't super hopeful, and neither one of them was in, you know, I was lucky to be in a position where like I don't have kids. I have a partner who doesn't make a ton of money, but because he's a teacher, so you guys can extrapolate from that. But he's super supportive of it. So I feel like I think if David at some point had been like, I resent you for not making any money, that would have probably been like the nail in the coffin. But he was always like, no, this is awesome. Like, you're awesome. Like, yes, you only made $5,000 this year. I mean, I actually think in total my taxes were like, I think I made $25,000 last year. So like, it's not a pretty scene.
So what was the really motivating factor that kept you going when things were looking bleak? You lost your co-founders. What is it about bringing women into this industry really that you're so passionate about that really kept you going?
It's interesting because I'm like you're so nice to think that it's like about mission and passion, which I think it obviously must be, but I think in the day to day, I think I'm just an incredibly stubborn person, and I also think that I think I'm also addicted to like there's something so gratifying about this process of like working on something and getting feedback and then improving it. And so to a certain extent, like, even though it wasn't going well, it was like, but I always felt like I had the tools to figure it out. And it's like, I don't know, like, I think I felt like it's like, there's a nut and like, I know it can be cracked. So I'm going to like, I'm going to crack it. Obviously, the mission part of it is really important. I think that, I mean, I guess, like, why do I think it's so important? I think that it's just been so gratifying. Like, it's just been so good for my life, like, going from being non-technical to technical. And it sounds like you guys maybe know about this also. It just opened up a whole world for me that was, like, right there, but I didn't know existed. Mm-hmm. And it's also like financially so far, it hasn't really panned out for me, but that I feel like is more choice than anything. But in terms of like people that I've had access to, like opportunities I've had, like it just totally, I mean, it was like, I feel like to call it a game changer, like doesn't even begin to approximate like the effect it's had on my life.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. It changes your whole life.
Yeah.
It really does.
And it just gave me access, and it's like this calling card, and like, it's just so powerful, and I feel like there's so much opportunity, both literally in jobs that already exist in tech, but also in terms of like what you can do with technology. But it just feels so close to so many people, and that just seems like such a missed opportunity for the individual, but also for like the companies and like the culture. You know what I mean? It's like we're losing on every front, I feel like, by making it so inaccessible and not available to like a bigger group of people.
So when we were talking earlier, you had kind of an interesting experience so you're based in New York, and you had an interesting experience traveling to, I think you said Palo Alto or maybe to San Francisco, and kind of the difference in mentality between the kinds of problems that are being solved in that bubble versus really the rest of the country and things that are cropping up in cities elsewhere. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was in Palo Alto. I was actually working out of the Mighty Bell offices because we've done a lot of work with them. And it was my first time kind of like hanging out in Silicon Valley and getting to know things. And what was really striking to me was just sort of was kind of becoming acquainted with the culture there, and then thinking about Skillcrush and just realizing like how like it felt to me like Skillcrush made no sense in that context, because Skillcrush is all about sort of explaining like why technology is important, like what is coding, like what is a programming language, like what do these things do? And in that culture, in that area, like those things are just things that it's like, you know, it's like you learn them in utero, you know what I mean? Like it's like you just totally take it for granted that like technology is important and coding is important, and like, you know, they're just so much further along in that thought process. And I guess what I took away from that was just that like I felt like if I had been in Palo Alto like from the get-go, it wouldn't have occurred to me to create Skillcrush, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't a need for it in the marketplace. And so it just left me, I think it just confirmed some of my suspicions that, you know, that just like they're living, like, I think that the Valley is a very specific cultural context, and it's not necessarily, I don't say that necessarily as a criticism, it's just as like an acknowledgement of that being the case, and the fact that there are opportunities and businesses and things that are, you know, outside of that are worth looking at and thinking about.
And it's an interesting kind of perspective to take on anything, not just the Valley versus the rest of the country, right? I mean, you can look at this in any industry and start to look at problems in a different perspective than they're currently being solved, and probably find a niche for yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
So, so what's next for you and Skillcrush?
So, just to round out the story, so basically my Trough of Sorrow lasted like all of 2013, and then basically what happened in like August around there is things just got really bad that I was just to the point of like, I was like, I'll do anything to get out of this situation or to fix it. And I started working with a woman to do marketing and sales. Mm-hmm. And we started to up our marketing and sales game, and actually we're able to move the needle in the fall. And then I almost quit again in December. But then I chickened out of quitting. At that point, I had hired an employee. I'm like, I shouldn't say this, but I will say this because it's a funny story, and then she'll finally know the story. I basically was like, I'm quitting, and I can't take it anymore. I can't do this anymore. And I told David, my boyfriend, who's now my husband, and I told my mom, and then I called my one of my co-founders, who's still very close with me and like very good relationship, and she owns equity and stuff like that. And I called her and I was like, I think I'm gonna have to like throw in the towel. And she's like, it's totally cool, like I understand, like it's been a good run, but it is what it is. And she was like, okay, well now you have to tell Emily, who was my first hire. And I was like, I can't tell Emily. I can't do it. I just hired her. I can't fire her. And Jennifer was like, okay. And I literally chickened out of firing Emily. So I did not close the business. And then in January, we did 3 times what we'd ever done in revenue on a monthly basis. And
what caused it?
I don't know. I think we had a lot of press in December, and It was like January. I was like, it's a new year. I want to learn to code. And then it's just basically like revenues just stayed up at that level. And so, I mean, so all of a sudden we were like super profitable on this like tiny little team. And, it was just like, it was like total pendulum swing, like
That's
in the
awesome.
opposite direction. Yeah, it was amazing. And it was like, thank God that I like stuck around long enough. So where we are now is kind of in this like funny spot of like, we have something that's like, we have like a little net of something that's like really, really working. And, we have hundreds of students that sign up, and that's all good. And now it's kind of like, we've like built up this, I feel like I've been like hoarding, cause like I went through my famine last year. So I've been like hoarding all my dollar bills under a mattress. And now I feel like I'm in this position of like, we like need to grow again. We need to like go that next, like take the next step up. And what I like think about all day long every day is like how I have to take like half the money in the bank account and spend it on growing. And I'm terrified of doing that.
Where are you going to spend it?
I'm like trying to think of a good joke. Marketing and product development.
Okay. Are there any avenues that have really worked for you guys where it's like a gas pedal on the marketing side? I'll take that as a yes.
No, that is a no. I mean, I'm
just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I'm always like talking to these people. Like I talk to these marketing people, and I'm like, they're like, I don't know. Like, do you want to spend like $3,000? And I'm like, do you understand that if I could spend $100,000 a month, like, and I could make 150, like, I would fucking do it. Like, all I want in life is a place to do that, but like, I can't find it.
Yeah. We talked to Gabriel Weinberg recently, and he was talking about his traction book and how there's, a dozen or so channels that you can pursue in terms of marketing, and chances are only one of them is going to work for you. And it sounds like so simple. You just find the one that works and dump your effort into that. And it's so impossible to find that one.
It's so hard. I mean, I will say, I was actually just reflecting on this before this call, that I was like trying to remind myself that like, I feel like I'm in this moment where I'm like, 5xing monthly revenues like was like no big deal. But like what's really hard is like 1.5xing revenues at this point, and it's like, no, it's all fucking hard. And it's, sorry, excuse my language, but it's like, I think it's just like what you've done is easy. So, I think the point is that obviously I have done some traction channels that have worked, but they're not working. Like the problem that we're having is like feeling like if we 10x our efforts in any one channel, we don't necessarily feel like we get 10x the results. Yeah. And that's what we're looking for. So for us, like one sort of shift that I've made recently is that we've done a lot of sort of marketing experiments, and what we found with these experiments is that they like the needle like flutters. But what happens is that our existing audience becomes like that much more engaged. So, for example, like webinars.
Yeah,
we were like, we're gonna do webinars. It's gonna be a gold mine of like email leads, and it hasn't been. But what we noticed is that like when somebody purchases a class, like they've gone to like 3 webinars. You know?
Yeah, it's a longer play.
Yeah. So that has really made me feel comfortable with the idea of like really putting resources and money into new product development, because I think that once we sort of like engage somebody in our community, like they really want to stick around with us. So I think at this moment, that's kind of more the direction we're going to go with, and just keep testing the marketing channels until I find that place where I can, you know, go from $1 million in revenue to 100 million, and I will tell you guys everything I learned in the process.
Yeah, please do.
I can't wait.
So as you're moving forward, where do we keep up with you online?
So the best place is skillcrush.com. I do occasionally tweet at Adda Birni. It's pretty infrequent. The better place is just at the Skillcrush Twitter. We also just started a YouTube channel, which I'm really excited about, where I make videos once a week about lots of important questions like how you can make money if all you know is HTML and CSS and stuff like that. So
nice.
Check that out.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is my favorite podcast. So.
Oh, thank you.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I love to hear that.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Rocketship podcast. If you enjoyed it, we have tons of other awesome episodes on our website. Check them out, rocketship.fm.
And while you're there, make sure you sign up for our newsletter. We're twice monthly. We send out actionable advice for entrepreneurs and exclusive links to AMAs with our guests. That's rocketship.fm. Sign up today.
Pretty eerie to know you're in a place that no human's ever been before.
This is Armchair Explorer, where the world's greatest adventurers tell their best stories from the road.
And 4 of us were swept down the side of the mountain, and then I knew there was no way out of this thing.
From the heart-pounding to the inspiring and the downright insane. Find Armchair Explorer, a part of APT Podcast Studios, wherever you get your podcasts.
Go and find what it is in the world that matches that wildness in yourself.
Hey, my name is Lovan Rumpf, and I've been working my ass off as a celebrity stylist by day and a podcast host by night. At the Low Life Podcast, it's all about keeping it real. We're talking fashion, beauty, to religion, sex, drugs, mental health. I mean, there's no topic off limits here, and vulnerability is mandatory. You can find my podcast, The Low Life, that's L-O, no W, everywhere and anywhere you listen to your podcasts. New episodes are out every Thursday. We'll see you then.